That's right.
And
Yeah, so I
so,
think there's a couple of pieces to that.
yeah,
How to break the log down into burnable chunks,
yeah,
but then getting into a state of flow to get it burnt. I think those are the separate pieces.
separate pieces, two
Yeah,
separate and very important pieces. So
yeah.
pick which one you want to describe first. You're going to be describing both, so it's up to you which one you
Okay.
want to.
Um, well, I think maybe the concept of breaking down the log, because I think that needs to come first in a way. So I think breaking up the big tasks into strategic next actions and things you're not going to do. So the snafu, and you help me break those tasks down into categorizations, and using what is the action as opposed to just what's the outcome. And so there's a bunch of ways you can break down a big task into its components,
Yeah,
and also have like what's the next strategic action that you do. So all of those things are helpful because thinking ahead and picturing what's the great, what does great look like for that outcome, sometimes brings you into a positive state of mind. So then you're starting already to start getting yourself into a flow state potentially, right? So I think that that's important to not just ignore the big scary task, but actually first break it down into steps, and then you can look at what are the first small steps that I can do, and I call that kindling. So if you only have a few matches, the concept is you can use your match to light a little bit of kindling or some dry twigs, and once that's lit, you can start burning bigger sticks, and then that will eventually build up a big enough fire to burn the log. And that's this concept of being in a state of flow. If you can get yourself into that state where all of a sudden everything just seems easy, time's flying by, you're enjoying yourself, you're getting positive feedback by accomplishing so much stuff. Then all of a sudden, when you tackle those bigger tasks that you may not want to do at the time when you started your day, now they seem like, hey, let's do them, right? And I think that's where you can build and build your day to accomplish by the end of the day or at the end of the week, um, much more than you could have if you just said, okay, well, I'm just going to force my way through and just try and burn that big log with all my matches. Or if you ever try to start a campfire, that's not the best way to do it. So.
yeah. And so you actually mentioned that even creating the kindling, like applying, getting things done, coming up with the strategic next action, that exercise alone might put you into flow. You mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of there's a few reasons why that is true. I think number one, the challenge of coming up with the strategic next action, right? The domino that'll get the whole thing going. That's an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's really interesting if you come up with an action that if you had just done a normal project plan and said, okay, let me do the waterfall, get this one done first.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up with a strategic next action is exciting, especially if you come up with an idea that almost cuts the project plan in half mentally, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
you come up with this major shortcut. I don't like using the word hack because it's not, I don't think we're talking about a hack. We're talking
Right.
about a strategic idea that saves you a ton
Mm-hmm.
of work because you sat and thought about it for a bit.
That's right.
And then it's interesting because when you do that, when the log showed up and you didn't feel like executing the log, but you did getting things done, maybe that got you
Mm-hmm.
into flow. Then you grab some readily available, unrelated kindling, started lighting
Mm-hmm.
it, and then you can get to a certain state where all of a sudden you actually feel like doing the strategic next action related to the log.
That's
Not
right.
only is it about you're ready to do it, but you actually feel like doing it because you now want to
That's
test that
right.
idea you had. And so
Yeah,
it's
and
almost
I
like
think
an
it's yeah,
asynchronous. It's asynchronous in a way.
it is. Yeah, and I think the times where I've gotten myself into flow successfully, and I know you've helped me, try and be more aware of how I got into flow, and try and figure out how to do it again. But I've noticed that if I can get some creativity going, like, just like that idea concept where, hey, I just figured out how to shortcut a bunch of things.
Yeah,
And that's a creative process. And for me, that's what triggers um, myself into a flow state. And
yeah,
I often find like this asynchronous thing where if I just start saying, well, what do I feel like doing? Actually, I feel like doing this completely unrelated small thing that I've been wanting to do since last week.
Yeah.
I just get that done, and I'm like, oh, I learned how to do something by doing that, and I can apply that to this. I get very excited, and then I go do that thing.
Yeah.
Not even at all related, probably sometimes in the complete opposite direction
Yeah.
to the big log that I have to get done by 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
But just by going and just following where my brain wants to go at the time,
Yeah.
in that moment, this is what I'm excited about doing. I eventually build myself up into this state of flow, hopefully, as quick as I can. And then, like you say, at that point, your perception changes, and now what seemed to be less interesting before or harder to do now seems just like, oh, let's do it and get it done. And I often find that I can get it done in half the time. And
in half the time,
it's more enjoyable. So
and
so at the end of the day, you've done a lot more work and not really had to do anything, but you have to give yourself that mental freedom, I think, and that's a hard thing to do if we've been trained,
yeah,
a certain way.
Well, and even before I started recording, when we were talking about running, and you made the comment that you can do a couple of these little things, and all of a sudden they all start to compound. And I was kind of reminded of that when you just described this. So you work on a small twig because you want to do it for a week. It's unrelated to the log, but there is one skill that you just exercised a bit and strengthened a bit, and that one skill is needed for the log. So all of a sudden you feel a little more confident, maybe even subconsciously, than you did before doing this unrelated task. So it's like, so there is a stacking tipping point in what you just described.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.